Joining me in a little bit, Alex Skolnick of Testament, and just saying he's only from Testament is actually wrong. He does way more than that. Alex, thank you. How's it going?
It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you so much. A little bit about what you've been up to actually during this pandemic.
I'm doing the most original thing anybody's ever done. I started a podcast. I know it's a new thing. It hasn't caught on yet. In all seriousness, I had planned to start a podcast for years. These past few years, I spent hundreds of days on the road. Yeah, in a weird way, the pandemic allowed me to really focus on it. And I got picked up by this great network called Osiris. They have like a couple hundred music podcasts. I get really creative with that. It's not just conversation. There's jam sessions I've had. My podcast is called Moods and Modes. And on top of that, I've done some new music projects that have come up. I sort of have a Rush cover band with the bassist from Suicidal Tendencies and the drummer from Anthrax. But we did YYZ, and it was before all the quarantine videos were everywhere. And I was getting a lot of questions, like, how did you guys do that? All play at the same time. Obviously, we know the answer. The parts are done separately. But that was one of the first quarantine videos. And just a whole assortment. I have my first method book that's coming out for Hal Leonard. So I've just been really focused on getting these projects that were, most of which were already in the works. Learning how to better use Logic, learning how to better use all the social media platforms, learning how to use Twitch. But you're also like a Genius Bar guy. I mean, you've walked me through the setup for this, and it's very technical. For those who don't know, Herman is like great with technology as well as guitar.
I've been doing Twitch for almost 3 years. So, before the pandemic happened, also the pandemic have given me the time to do some things that I always wanted to do, like, improve what I can do on Twitch, because I was doing Twitch on tour as well with a remote setup, right? It's pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. I had cameras attached to my shoulders and all kind of crazy stuff. So this actually gave me some time to do everything I wanted to do. One of the reasons I was playing an Ibanez when I started is because you were playing something similar, right? An S model back in the Testament. And you have been through quite of a journey in music. I know you've done a bunch of jazz stuff. You kind of took some time off Testament. What was it like back then? I mean, what's the difference between getting an endorsement deal back then?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Well, when I played that type of guitar, I still have the main one. It was brand new. I think it was the first run of that line, and it was called the Sabre. They later changed it to 540S, but I think the S stood for Sabre. By the time I stepped away from Testament and I kind of went on this whole musical journey into sort of becoming the player I am now, it just didn't make sense to have an endorsement. I went back to the university and studied music, learned how to write charts and play with horn players and piano players. Just a lot of stuff that I wanted to do musically that I hadn't had the chance to do. Closer to 2010, Testament is back. A few reunion shows, and they went so well. Next thing you know, we have a new record deal, and bands like Heaven and Hell and Judas Priest and Motorhead want to take the band on tour. At that point, I was playing Heritage guitars, which are great. And I got into them for their jazz guitars. They couldn't build a lot of guitars because they're all hand built. And as Testament's blowing up. I was also playing for this show called the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which turned into this arena show. Like all these high profile things, as well as my instrumental music. And people want to buy my guitar and they couldn't get it. I talked to a bunch of companies, and ESP was the one that said, they basically made me a high level endorsement. It's like, yes, we will give you a signature instrument. We will work with you on the signature instrument. And that was very different from before, where it's just like, okay, here's a guitar, play this guitar. So with ESP, you know, I came into it, but with some history, and I was like in a different place, and it's worked out great. This is one example of the guitar.
I looked at your guitar, actually I was checking out before, and it's an interesting combination of the classic kind of single cut along with a locking system. Can you tell me a little bit more about that guitar? We have a lot of guitar nerds here.
Yeah, as far as this guitar, I definitely wanted a blend of classic guitar. Well, first of all, one that's easier to play. So if players who grew up with more Strat type guitars, or the ones like you're playing, you know, like Ibanez's and Jackson's and stuff like that, they could play this, but it has that classic tone. And the first two versions of it had a fixed bridge. So we did this one, the Aquaburst one, with a floating bridge. And it was really just because, you know, some of the people getting the guitar wanted the option. I got it. And lo and behold, I started using it after years of just avoiding the bar. It was just such a big thing. That's not for me. I was listening to Gary Moore, for example. That was like more where I was coming from. Now that I have the tremolo bar, I'll use it. You know, stuff. I'll hear stuff like Alan Holdsworth or Jeff Beck, where they use it. Oh, not the over the top stuff, but just as a texture. And I like to do that.
And is that what you use for touring with Testament, or do you play a fixed and a floating on?
I go back and forth. Yeah, I usually have 3 guitars. So there's a silver version of this. That's a fixed bridge. There's another one that's a burst. It's listed as Lemon Burst, and that's also a fixed bridge. And then there's this one. Do
you feel a guitar that's been used and played a lot sound better than brand new guitar off the box?
Yeah, I mean there's some truth to that. Mm-hmm. You know, I think they develop over time. You know, they age like wine, which is good. You know, it's better that they don't get worse. But you know, if you ever go to one of these vintage guitar shops, or you know, a guitar show, and they have these great, you know, guitars from the 50s and 60s, maybe even earlier. Yeah, there's something special there. They're really nice. You know, there's nothing like a played guitar.
I feel like Testament is bigger than it's ever been these days. You guys are like doing huge tour in South America and everything. Is this what's happening?
Yeah, for sure. I think part of what happened is the first wave of the band, in the midst of, you know, groups like Slayer and Megadeth, you know, in their prime. And it was tough. It was tough and there wasn't that much oxygen for heavy music at that time. now it's not only more accepted, but you've had waves of bands that followed, and a lot of those bands were sort of right behind Testament, but it was like during the Ozfests in the 2000s. That kind of became a whole new thing. We didn't have those. If those had been around when we started, that I'm sure we would have been on them. But Testament was some music that it seemed to be appreciated by fans who were coming of age after we had done that first wave of albums. But when I came back, instead of going right back to the first few albums, we just tried this thing. Let's take death and black metal thing that they sort of established after I was gone, with the melodies and some of the qualities that I helped bring on that first wave of records. It just fit in very well with the music world now.
So I'm just giving you a view of someone who back then who has no clue about anything about music, right? I'm just a guy who plays the guitar, I was listening to metal. I thought, Alex Skolnick left. I guess he wants to learn some other stuff, doesn't fit into Testament. Maybe I thought, you need to get out of his system. You did the Alex Skolnick trio, you did the jazz stuff. And back then, it was like a machine, right? You didn't want, the Testament was like a machine. Do you feel like the world have changed now? Testament have changed. It's not a machine, so you can do that. I believe back then was less accepting of the diversity of a musician. How do you feel about that?
That's very true. That's very true. What I did, was insulting, basically. Pursuing a different genre of music. I mean, you would think that, like, the reaction some fans had with me, like, just wanting to expand and play with musicians outside of the metal genre. I want to be a diverse musician, and I thought that was it just felt right. I couldn't understand the reaction. Like, why a negative reaction? It's not like I went and joined Poison or something, I think years later, it's not quite as weird. Like, you can have, I mean, this is not like a metal person at all, but like a very high profile person is Dave Grohl. And it's like, oh my God, Dave Grohl's got another band. Oh, he's got he's got multiple bands. That's kind of normal now. Mm-hmm. And then there are metal players that, I'm no longer like the only guy that does metal and does other types of music. My friend Dave Davidson from Revocation, nobody can accuse him of not being metal. He's the front man of his band.
Yeah, he's a jazz player, and he's
a real jazz player. Yeah, we've played together.
You guys want to see Blindfolded playing? Wow, okay.
And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Dude, you were shredding it, man. I couldn't find my way in on that one.
I think I play better when I can't see.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun. It's fun to do that. Classical piano players practice that way, and it forces you to visualize.
Were you kind of disappointed at certain fans, that you went to jazz? Did you feel something like, I'm disappointed? Like, these people now think I'm a bit of a...
Nobody ever said that to my face, but it was probably around the early 2000s. During that time, I did sit in with the band a couple times. It was drama. It was like a behind what we might call today a toxic environment. At the time, it was really, really difficult. I had no idea that I would rejoin and there would be this whole resurrection. And it was around the early 2000s that internet message boards started. And that was when I really got to see it and got to see like the ugliness of it. and just the insults and just, it really felt good to start doing albums with the band again and just to shut these people up.
You know what? I try to explain that to people, and I'll say it again. Just because we played in a band doesn't mean we have to die while being still in the same band that we played in. Alex, thank you so much, man. You've been amazing. Thank you. We'll see you. We'll chat soon. See you guys later. Take care of yourself. You guys, everybody. You guys are awesome.